Hello, everyone. I'm Rex Carter, Associate Programmer of Narrative Shorts at Bend Film, and I am here with Jake and Bill and their two films that are part of this block. I'm going to start with Bill, your documentary. Oh, so timely, obviously.
Yeah.
um, how how was it that you first got interested in this subject matter and hooked up with your subject?
Yeah, so this was part of a docu-series we did. It ended up being just three parts. I was hoping to have it be longer for a variety of reasons that didn't work out, but he was the very first person I thought of. And so I wanted to find a photojournalist who could kind of shed light on what it means to be a photojournalist. And I had seen one of his lectures a couple of years ago and just, fell in love with him as an individual. He's such a charismatic and just genuine person. And then I knew I wanted to explore both, a topic area that showed what it means to be a photojournalist, but then also the insight of like one of the issues, that they often cover. So his life's work was on documenting the migration of individuals from Central America to the United States, and he was kind of one of the pioneers working for the LA Times. And so he had just retired, and he lives here down the road from us. So there was a few unexpected things that came about, though. So we started with just like interviewing him, having him tell his story, and then he suggested, going down to Tijuana and filming down there because he had spent so much time there. So we spent, one long day, him kind of recounting the stories. And then, with the surge that had happened after he'd already retired, we were able to tie that into the film and kind of talk about, that kind of bookend to his story and to the story of immigration, that he had spent 30 years documenting.
And his photography is just so wonderful. Well, all of the images you use in the film, the early black and white ones are just so just gorgeous and haunting. And I really loved the ones where the like the religious ceremony just on the other side of the fence,
Yeah.
um, and how that whole area has, sort of the then and the now aspect of the documentary. Um, uh, and so that was the same area that he'd already been
Yeah.
to back in the 70s.
Yeah. So down, you just go down south of here in San Diego where I am, San Isidro, it's at the border. So it used to be literally a chain link fence, back in the early 70s. And so, it's changed. There's a huge fence now, but the issues are kind of, the same. And that's what's so great about Don is he's able to capture, the humanity of his subjects. It's really one of the keys to photojournalism is that you get to know them. So he invests days and days before you even take an image sometimes, and really try to get the people to trust him and open up to him. And so he lived in that life, and he spoke fluent Spanish, so he was able to, as best he could, kind of assimilate into the culture and get to know them and really document over the last 30 years, how it's changed and how so much of it is still the same as it was
Still
back
the
then.
same. That was my
Yeah.
impression of the tragedy of not too much progress has actually been made
Yeah,
in the 30 years.
for sure.
And his compassion really comes through in the film, and that's one of the main things I took away from it is what a lovely human being he
Yeah,
is.
he is. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Jake, quite a very different film in the same block. Some of our blocks are um, we just tried something different, put different types of films together in blocks this year um, around a theme. Uh,
Mm.
yours quite different film, being a comedy, a narrative comedy. But I wanted to ask you kind of about the origins of your idea.
Sure.
Um, just the initial premise and what was the first thing that clicked for you in the story?
Um, I used to be part, unfortunately, it kind of folded with the pandemic, but I was part of this little kind of micro production company here in LA. It was called Some Assembly Required, and it was essentially improv for writers, where we would actually pull ideas out of hats, and you had to make a short or a one-act play about it. And the idea I pulled out of the hat for this one was tell a story about a very dangerous area rug. So my girlfriend, Rebecca, who plays the lead role, we kind of spitballed on that for a minute, and we kind of came to a what if it was dangerous for racists, and then we kind of built it out from there.
Well, from such odd beginnings, it's actually a very nicely, fully constructed premise. I mean, the screenplay is my favorite part because it's exactly what I love. You establish a premise,
Mm-hmm.
then your character has to learn the rules of that premise, and then you get to play around with the boundaries of that premise.
Yeah.
And then wrap it up with some sort of twist.
Yeah.
And you follow those things perfectly, with such a great pace and rhythm, and it's just extraordinary. Yeah. So production wise, you said you shot it with your girlfriend?
In our house, in our living room.
Is it like a one-day shoot then, or how many?
Yep, that was God, I don't know, 6 a.m. to 11 o'clock at night, I think. We spent about $1,200 on flowers and plants.
My very next question.
But we bought them all from Home Depot, which for anybody who needs to populate a film with flowers has a 100% return policy for perennials. And so we exclusively bought those. We actually did research on what are the top 10 plants as far as like absorbing carbon dioxide. So which are the 10 plants that like contribute most to cleaning the air? So we picked from those plants, went to 4 different Home Depots. So it didn't seem like we were doing a batch return. And that was our day before, and our day after was returning everything. I mean, and cleaning up the house, which was a mess.
Yeah, the idea of the toxicity, I think that was sort of the key, nugget of the premise.
Yeah, we actually we edited the music video portion to "Toxic" by Britney Spears, which I quickly figured out is the most licensed song in the world, and they make you pay for it. So we couldn't get that, and actually the song in the movie is by a band I used to worship back home in New York that I saw play at this little club all the time, and I reached out to them, and they liked the short and gave me the song.
Yeah, that's my advice to short filmmakers: is don't use music you can't get the rights to.
Yeah, no bands. That's the biggest tip I can
Film
give
festivals
you.
have issues with that. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh well, thank you. It was such a wonderful film, and Bill, thank you. What are you on to next for you guys? Bill, are you working on anything now?
Yeah. I'm working on a feature documentary about a program that helps transition incarcerated and formerly incarcerated individuals into college. And so it's had great success. We were filmed one of our subjects, so it was just accepted at UCLA. And it's about, really addressing the parole problems we have in this country, the parole system, all the challenges that there are. And it's very punitive. It's not really set up to help individuals succeed. And so there are a handful of programs like this. We have something called the Rising Scholars Network in California, which is statewide with community colleges. And so it's documenting these individuals are turning around their lives, and all of them want to do good things, help their community. Some of them want to become lawyers and change laws, but these are people who have been incarcerated for a variety of reasons, have a troubled background, are really turning their lives around. So it's a really positive story.
And how can people keep track of you as a filmmaker? Do you have a website or?
Yeah, well, we have kind of each of our films have a different website, but in general, we're Palomar Films is our brand. So we have palomarfilms.com. Yeah, you can check it out.
Excellent. And Jake, how about you? Anything to keep an eye out for in the future?
I'm a working writer, so I've got 8 or 9 things at once with more writing partners than I can count.
Okay.
The idea is that the the law of averages will eventually be in your favor. So a bunch of that, Rebecca and I wrote a podcast that it's a semi-finalist in the Austin Film Festival's podcast competition. So we're kind of focusing on that and hoping we can get a little bit of
Congratulations. A fictional podcast?
Yeah. Sort of a sci-fi send-up of the like 1950s and 60s, like tips and tricks advice shows for American housewives. We're basically kind of calling it Westworld meets Make America Great Again.
Nice.
Well, I will keep an eye out for you too. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for submitting your films. Both
Thanks, Rex.
Opposite sides of the spectrum, but both completely enjoyable.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great job, Bill.
All right. Yeah, you too.
Bye, guys.
Take it easy. Yeah.